Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching today's webinar. My name is Carlos. You might know already from from 2 weeks ago, from our first webinar. And let's just wait a couple of minutes to give others some time to join. In the meantime, I'm going to be sharing with you what we're going to be talking about, although you might already know. Today's webinar is going to deal with basically the steps that you will need to undergo if you start a journey with Miracle Surrogacy. That will go from the first consultations until the very end when you are back home already. It will be a very general overview, and I want to make it very clear that every journey will always be different, and there is no two journeys that will be the same. So what you think worked for you, maybe it didn't work for somebody else, or what you think that will work for somebody, it might not be the actual pathway for somebody else, right? I see more people joining in from different places and countries. That's lovely. And I'll start sharing my screen so you can start seeing already everything. Just give another minute if you don't mind. Thank you for your patience. Okay, I think that that's a lot of people already. I know some of them are missing still, but let's get started with today's webinar. As I was telling you, this is going to be a step-by-step guide to understanding the international surrogacy progress with Miracle Surrogacy. Okay, my name is Carlos Ruiz. I have been working with Miracle for almost 6 years now, and I am proud to say that I'm the parent of two little rascals, born already 2 years ago, and with the second journey, ongoing journey, hopefully will render good results in a few months. And I'll be today's presenter. Before we begin and dive directly into the matter, a little disclaimer: nothing that I will be saying today should be taken as a medical advice, as a legal advice, or as an immigration advice. Why is that? Because every journey has very particular circumstances that must be dealt with these specialists in each area, okay? We do offer the guidance throughout our journeys, and you'll get some guidance here today, but never take our guidance as a legal advice from a professional of those fields, okay? Let's get started. We are going to go through a few steps, beginning with the first consultation and the initial planning, following with the signing of the contract and everything related to the medical part prior to beginning your journey. Then we'll deal with the embryo creation, embryo shipping in case you already have embryos, and then we'll move on to the surrogate matching timeframes and the actual embryo transfer times also. Once we're pregnant, we need to go through the pregnancy care and start getting ready for the exit process. Then we'll deal with the birth and exit process per se and going back home. Remember that at the end of the webinar, you will have some time to pose your questions. And if possible, of course, I'll be answering them for you. And if not, please, you all should have my email somewhere in your inboxes. Don't hesitate to reach out. It's carlos@miraclesurrogacy.com. So let's get started with the initial planning and the consultation. After each title, we'll be seeing another slide like this one that will be showing the progress of the stage of the journey, so you can have a clearer idea of where we are at that moment. So let's get right into it. Your initial consultation, either via phone, video call, or in person, because we do offer in-person consultations in many cities around the world, should be to deal with those aspects of your journey that you still don't have a good idea. And those could be, for example, providing your medical background to make sure that you're being informed about the journey type that you really need. say that you have already embryos, that's a shipped embryo program. If you don't have embryos, but you already have your own egg donor, that's a self-cycle program. Or if you already have, if you don't have embryos and you need an egg donor, that's a premium program with an egg donor. So your medical background will serve us to understand how your journey will look like. Important also to understand what the goal is and what are the expectations that you will have, mainly to make sure that we can make them happen for you, of course, but also to provide the guidance that you will need. It's not the same talking about trying to have one baby, for example, instead of having twins. It's a different story. The process is basically the same, but it entails different things. Then what options are available? Again, depending on your needs, we have different programs available. And we need to understand also what is the expected timeline that you have in mind, because you might be starting your consultations and planning on beginning your journey in 2 months, or maybe you're planning to do it in 2 years. That will also change the way we explain things, especially because right now we know how things work in Mexico, but maybe in 3 months' time or in a year, things will be different. So that is also to manage expectations. And I'm not going to ever be tired of repeating that each journey, each consultation is going to be unique and different and tailored to the needs of the intended parent in plural that we are attending at that moment. After your first consultation, communications should be happening at your own pace, meaning that if we already know that you are planning on beginning your journey in the next couple of months, it is only natural that communication will flow quickly and you'll be expecting news from us probably every other day. But it's also very important to respect your timing. And if you already know that you're going to do your journey in 2 years, then most likely we will be communicating with you every other month to let you know if there's been any improvement in our programs and for you to let us know if there's been any changes in your expectations and timelines, right? But throughout these follow-up communications, what matters the most is that you get all of your questions answered. As I always say, there is no silly questions except for those questions that are never asked. So please, whenever you're consulting with us, make sure you fire away all your questions and you get the answer. Let's dive into the contract signing, the contract preparation, and what the medical preparation of the intended parents looks like. We are at this second part of the journey steps. What we will need from you to prepare the contract and to make sure that we can move forward is basically your details, who you are, where you live, and we will also need to have information about 3 different figures, which could be the same person, but it's still 3 different figures. We would need an emergency contact. This figure is someone that we would only call or reach out to by email in case that we don't have an answer from you after a few days of checking in with you, or if we were to call you and you didn't pick up the phone. Of course, we'll always try several times, but that's basically the intent of that figure, the emergency contact. Someone that will be there just in case you cannot pick up the phone or reply to our emails. 2 more figures there. We have the guardian and the personal representative. We don't want that to happen ever, but in the case where the intended parents died, for instance, we would need someone to take care of the baby, and that would be the guardian. The guardian's role basically is to take over if something ever happens to the intended parents, and it is only meant, the guardian, to take care of the baby, whereas the financial responsibilities of that journey and that baby are meant to be taken care by the personal representative. In many cases, it's the same person. Sometimes it's a different person. It depends on your needs and who you have available and willing to take on that responsibility. Also, your contract should include all of your program details, meaning whether it's a shipped embryo program, a premium program, a guaranteed baby program, a self-cycle, It will also include the information, the little information about the egg donor, whether you're using frozen eggs or fresh eggs. It will also include a breakdown of the costs of your specific journey and many more things and policies and protocols that are going to be followed throughout the whole journey. We will need copies of your passports or IDs, and this information should be updated all journey long, meaning that if at some point while your journey is still active, you have a new passport or there is something that needs to be updated in the contract, Miracle will create an addendum to your contract, and it needs to be updated in our database also, especially because at the end of the journey, we will issue documents that you will need to present to the embassy's appointment and to the law firm that you'll be working with. And that information is always best if updated to avoid any problems towards the end of the journey. Now, the signing of the contract. Basically, once we have the contract ready, you'll receive it in your email. You can read it. It's a very long contract. And there will be a back and forth of emails because you will have questions and we will answer them regarding your contract. Once you are ready to sign the contract, basically, you can sign it digitally. You can do it from your mobile devices, and you can share it with us via email. Once we have that contract, we will request of you the payment of the first stage, which basically is the first payment, and that's when your journey can begin. Now, it's not meant to be discussed during this webinar, but I'll give you a hint. Miracle Surrogacy's programs are divided in 5 different payment stages. Each one of those goes with a different milestone throughout the journey, and each amount to be paid is different because, of course, it's a different milestone. And it's the beginning of the journey, the embryos are ready, then pregnancy confirmed, week 16 and week 24. For more information on those specific payments and the amounts, you can see our website or you can contact your coordinator if you're already in contact with Miracle Surrogacy. While we are getting your contract ready, or right before or right after, there are some medical tests that you have to undergo as intended parents. All of that is to make sure that we can move forward without any delays in your journey. And typically, the tests that we're going to request are going to be for sure STI screening, and for the male providing the sperm, a semen analysis. Then, depending on the program type, and also depends on the age of the intended parent that's providing the sperm, we might also request a DNA fragmentation in sperm, then a karyotype testing, and also blood works, which again, it might also include the STI, but blood work, sonograms, and hormone levels are mainly requested for those intended parents that are providing the eggs themselves for a self-cycle program. In this case, we have also their own donor, the wife, for example, could be providing the eggs. And in order to make sure that we can move forward with your journey with a self-cycle program, we must make sure that the expected results are at least good or decent. And how do we know that? Basically, because of those tests that you are going to undergo and those results that you're going to send to us. Especially with hormone levels and blood work, those results will help the doctors determine what to expect in terms of egg retrieval and embryo creation results. Let's move forward a little bit. And we are at the point of embryo creation. That's for premium programs or guaranteed programs in which you do require an egg donor, or if you're having your own egg donor also, or the embryo shipment in case you already have the embryos. We are at the third stage, or the third step. Just give me a second. Thank you. And let's go directly into the embryos that you already have. The picture you see there, it's a cryopreservation tank filled with liquid nitrogen. That's how the embryos are cryopreserved. But I'll explain how the shipment and how the process works. Once you share with us all of the information that we need about your embryos, about the clinic where they were created, and we have all of the reports, that's when we will begin with the shipment scheduling. Basically, we will share all of your information with the receiving clinic, either in Cancun, Mexico City, or Merida. And once we have the green light from one of those clinics, we will reach out to your origin clinic throughout our specialized partner shipper, hoping to get a pickup date in the next 2 to 4 weeks. That's the typical time that we need to have the date of the shipment. And once we have the shipment date, and that date arrives, of course, the shipment will take place, and it's between 24 and 48 hours that the shipment will take to make it to the destination clinics. One might think, why so long? Why 48 hours? Well, most clinics have very limited openings for the pickup of genetic material or for the receival of genetic material. Therefore, if, for instance, we have the origin clinic in Oregon, USA, having a time frame from 9 in the morning till 11 in the morning for pickup of embryos, and the receiving clinic in Mexico has a window of probably 9 in the morning till 1 p.m., but the flight does not land in Mexico until 4 p.m. That basically means that the shipment has already begun, but the delivery of the genetic material will take place on the next day in the morning. Nothing to worry about. You might be thinking, where are my embryos going to be kept while the shipment is not yet delivered? Well, that tank you're seeing in the picture is a permanent tank, if you will, but the tanks that are used to transport the genetic material have the same structures, meaning that they are filled with liquid nitrogen, and they have an autonomy of many, many hours, and in some cases, many, many days before they are no longer usable. Very important to understand that shipments of genetic materials should only be done by specialized carriers, certified carriers, and for the peace of mind of all the parties involved, Miracle is only partnered with these sort of specialized shippers, which we can disclose the information the moment that, of course, you're ready to move forward with your shipped embryo program. Now, embryos need to be created. That's a different story, a longer one, because there are more steps and more factors that to be considered. The first one is always the egg donor. If we're talking about a shipped embryo program, no need to find an egg donor. If we're talking about a cell cycle, you already have your own egg donor, and the times are shorter typically because we can control when you're going to be coming to Mexico. But there might be a selection of egg donor time frame that you will need to select an egg donor. We must provide the availability of that specific egg donor. And it might be that because she just donated for somebody else, we need to wait maybe 2 to 3 months until she's suitable for an egg retrieval. But regardless of that first step, which is selection of an egg donor, once she is ready, whether a self cycle or a premium program or a guaranteed baby program, the next step is the ovarian stimulation. The ovarian stimulation typically begins on the second day of the bleeding and consists in basically providing the lady that is going to be providing the eggs with drugs that will stimulate her body, in specific the ovaries, to tell those ovaries, hey, instead of only stimulating 1 or 2 follicles that you would naturally do, we need all of the follicles that you have ready to be stimulated so they can be retrieved. That stimulation, the ovarian stimulation, typically lasts anything between 9 to 11 days, might be 12. And we always emphasize that every egg retrieval is different because it's always a different woman and everybody reacts different to the stimulation. So what for some could be 10 days, for others could be 9, for others could be 11. But for sure, what we know is that once the eggs are ready to be retrieved and the procedure actually happens, which is the egg retrieval, on that same day, if the sperm is already available at the clinic, that's when the egg fertilization will take place. The egg fertilization basically is what you see on that picture on the right-hand side of the screen. And of course, this is not the exact, this is just a imagination of the actual process. It's much less clear, the image, when you see it under the microscope. But basically, it's because of the technique that is used for fertilization, it's called intracytoplasmatic sperm injection, ICSI. It's basically each egg is injected with one sperm, hoping that it fertilizes and starts developing to become a healthy embryo. The day of the fertilization is day 0, and typically on day 5, 6, and some cases day 7, each one of the blastocysts or embryos that have reached a implantation stage is frozen. Now, very important to understand that due to the attrition that happens naturally, not all of the eggs will become healthy embryos. And as I was telling you, 5, 6, 7 days, that's typically the time frame for the embryo development. And you might have heard or know about day 3 embryos. Yes, it is possible to freeze embryos on day 3. Nowadays, it's not that common anymore, but still there might be some cases that due to the quality of the genetic material or the actual embryo that's in development, it could be that the embryos are frozen on day 3. Not the expectation though. Now, once we have reached that last day of of development of the embryos, that's when the actual PGT takes place. PGT stands for pre-implantation genetic testing. In order to analyze those embryos, they must be biopsied, and that biopsy is taken on the last day of development, right before they are frozen. That small biopsy, that small sample, is later sent to the genetic lab, and it typically takes from 2 to 4 weeks on average to receive the embryo genetic testing results. And once we have the results, that's when we say that our embryos are ready for implantation. One last comment about the embryos and the embryo creation process. There should be expectations, yes, but it is very important to understand that the results should never be considered a guarantee, meaning that if I have 20 eggs, I shouldn't expect to have 20 healthy embryos. The same way that if I have 20 eggs, I should not expect to have 0 embryos. On average, 30-35% of the mature eggs reach the blastocyst stage in which they can be implanted, but that is just an average. Sometimes it could be more than that 30%, and sometimes it could be less. It always depends on the specific features of every embryo, and also, for example, the age of the egg donor, the quality of the sperm that is used for fertilization. So again, it's good to have expectations, but it's basic to understand that we shouldn't expect all of the eggs to become embryos. Now, embryo creation steps. This is a summary of what I just explained. Egg donor is ready. Day 0, begin with stimulation of the ovaries. I wrote day 12 because that's typically the maximum. That's when the egg retrieval happens and also the egg fertilization. Then around 8-18, that's when the embryos finish development. And around day 40, that's when we receive the results of the genetic testing. Now, I did mention PGT, and I'm referring specifically to PGT-A. A stands for aneuploidy, which in plain words means that we are looking for abnormalities in those embryos. And those embryos that are detected with abnormalities cannot be implanted. The next slide, whoops, I think I just went too fast, sorry. Once we have the embryos ready, that is when they have already finished their development and undergone the pre-implantation genetic testing, that's when the surrogate matching timeframe begins. This is one of the most discuss topics with us and with intended parents throughout the consultations, because typically the expectation is that the embryo matching, sorry, the embryo, oh my God, what's wrong with me today? The surrogate matching process takes many, many months or many years in some cases, because that's what we are used to hearing, right? We know that in the US typically takes months, many months, and sometimes years to have a surrogate match with you. Certainly, we know that that also happens in Canada, but it's not the case in Mexico with Miracle Surrogacy. But before I give you that time frame for the surrogate matching, let's go over how surrogates are screened. Surrogates are screened in a way 365 days a year with Miracle. We have a non-stop recruitment strategy, and typically only 30 to 40% of all of the surrogates that the candidates to be surrogates become fully screened surrogates because they don't meet the criteria, some of them. But in any case, every surrogate that has been matched with an intended parent has gone through a very thorough screening process, which begins with the initial application of the actual surrogate and a personal interview that is conducted by Miracle Surrogacy. Once we understand that they are candidates to become surrogates and they can move forward, they have to go through a legal counseling. That is a very important process to make sure that they understand what their journey will look like and what the legal part of the journey, not for them really, but for the intended parents, will look like, but they must be informed always. Then the evaluation of the pregnancy and medical history, and always we're talking about previous pregnancies because it is a requirement that all of the surrogates, before they become fully screened and accepted surrogates, they must have their own children. Then they go through screenings at the clinics to make sure that they are fertility approved. Then they undergo the psychological assessment conducted by professionals, verification and identification of verification of the ID and the documents that they submit. We also review the living conditions and the support system that they will have throughout the pregnancy. And then they receive the final approval. After that, it might be a week, it might be a month, typically it's not more than 2 months, that they are waiting to be matched with an intended parent at what we call the pool of surrogates. And that pool of surrogates is what we use once we have your embryos ready. And the moment we receive your embryos, you're shipping them, or the moment we have the embryos ready after the actual PGT testing. During the first 4 weeks of the surrogate matching timeframe, we are going to use those 4 weeks to conduct what we call the refresh screening, which is basically an update on what we already know was good, mainly to make sure that what was good in the past, 2 months ago, a month ago, is still good to proceed. If you think about it, the first 4 weeks, that's 28 days, and that's the duration of a menstrual cycle. And why 4 weeks? Because we need the surrogate to be on the menstrual cycle so we can conduct those refresh screenings. Same thing happens with the next 4 weeks, 5 to 8, which is the endometrial preparation. We also need the surrogate to have the menstrual cycle to begin with the actual endometrial preparation. That is why it can last up to 4 more weeks. So we are now at 8 weeks of waiting. And once she has the cycle and begins with the actual stimulation of the endometrium, typically in 2 more weeks, she'll be ready for embryo implantation. If you put all of those numbers together, you'll see that approximately 8 to 10 weeks should be the needed time for your surrogate to be ready. We will be letting you know who your surrogate is and her medical records, typically a week prior to the actual embryo implantation. I know you will have questions about this, so make sure you write them down. But yes, in certain cases, we do accept requests for specific criteria for your surrogate. But as long as those criteria that you request are feasible, we are happy to match you with a surrogate that meets your requirements, but we can never guarantee them, okay, those requirements. Now, a very short summary here about how the surrogate matching works. Week 0, embryos are ready. Then the first 4 weeks for the updated screening. The next 4 weeks for the preparation of the endometrium. And then the last 2 weeks for the monitoring of the stimulation and the actual embryo transfer to take place. By the way, in all of our contracts, we have a section that states that if we take longer than 12 weeks to have a surrogate ready for you with an embryo transfer date, the intended parents will be compensated because we have not we didn't make it happen as we committed to. Okay. Now, pregnancy, pre-exit process and preparations. Once we have the embryo transfer happening, there is a period of 4 weeks in which nothing is certain because we don't know yet the results of the pregnancy tests. And it's not meant to be here, but I'll explain it anyway. Between embryo transfer and pregnancy confirmation, those 4 or 5 weeks are meant for pregnancy test, ultrasound to detect gestational sac, and ultrasound to detect the actual heartbeat of your baby. Okay, let me see if I have it. No, I think it's not meant to be in this presentation, but yes, after embryo implantation, 10 days after, we'll do the first pregnancy test. Another 10 days after, so it's 20 days post-transfer, more or less, we will have the first ultrasound, hoping to see the gestational sac. And approximately 30 days post-transfer, we will have a second ultrasound, hoping to not only see the gestational sac, but at that time, it should be also possible to hear the heartbeat of your little baby. And that is the time when you'll be confirmed pregnant, not before. Even though you might have confirmed pregnancy test or a positive pregnancy test, we will not confirm you are pregnant or officially pregnant until we are at a heartbeat ultrasound. By that time, typically it's 7 to 8 weeks of gestational age. Therefore, you are already well within the second month of pregnancy. Now, you might be doing numbers and think, okay, it's been 30 days post-transfer. That's not 8 weeks. How can I be 8 weeks pregnant? Long story short, the time that the embryos have spent in development in the lab, that time already accounts for gestational age. And by the time the embryos are implanted, your embryos are between 2 and 3 weeks of gestational age. So if you put those 2-3 weeks plus another 4 or 5 weeks between embryo transfer and heartbeat detection, that should add up to 8 total weeks. Now, with heartbeat confirmation, that's when we start with the actual pregnancy care, that we call it like that. And despite having appointments, regular appointments every 4 weeks during the first and second trimester and every other week towards the end of the pregnancy, there's other milestones and appointments that will be taking place. And of course, you'll be informed. Week 10-12, week 20-22, and week 30-32, at those 3 points of the pregnancy, we will conduct what we call structural ultrasounds, which are, to be honest, like regular ultrasounds, but more in depth, more measuring and more images of those ultrasounds, meant to make sure that your baby is growing as expected, that the measurement of the bones, the radius of the head, and every parameter is growing according to the gestational age. Another important milestone for us is the NIPT test, which typically happens between week 10 and week 15. The NIPT, that stands for non-invasive prenatal test, is meant to first confirm that there is no genetic connection of the surrogate and the baby. Second, to rule out any chromosomal abnormalities related to the pair of chromosomes number 21, 18, and 13. That's basically Down syndrome, Patau syndrome, and Andrew syndrome. Those are 3 of the most common critical or life compatible genetic problems that a baby could be impacted by. And the third thing that the NIPT will do is confirm the gender of your baby. I know that with PGT, we already rule out most of these things, but let's not forget that pre-implantation genetic testing is not 100% accurate. We're talking about 98% accuracy. So this is a confirmatory test in a way that what was figured out throughout the PGT is still good to go, right? Now, I'll say it again, every pregnancy is different. So timing, what for one specific surrogate was happening on week 13, for another one could be week 14. No stress over that. And that's mainly because every journey is different, every surrogate has different needs. And also sometimes due to high volume of pregnancies that we have, we need to make appointments work with everybody's schedules at the clinics and also the surrogate's own agendas. Now, throughout your pregnancy, while you're in communication with your coordinator, you'll be receiving information about what the end of the journey will look like in terms of legal steps. And we see here on screen right now a few of the steps, a few of the actual things that you'll need to go over with your coordinator. And those will be, for example, reviewing the legal and administrative requirements that you will have to make sure you meet for your specific country. It's not the same if you are returning to the US compared to returning to New Zealand or to Spain or to China. Each country has different regulations, different needs. Therefore, each intended parent will receive personalized advice on how to get ready for the last step of the journey, which is the exit process. Those documents that you have to prepare will have to be validated and you'll have to share them with our team to make sure that they are specifically the ones that you need. You will also have to talk to your coordinators about coordinating the travel requirements and accommodation that you will have to seek here in Mexico. And we are always happy to share with our intended parents recommendations of where to stay or where not to stay and how to move around Mexico City, Cancun, or Merida. You will also receive a very in-depth explanation of the the birth certificate process here in Mexico and what it will look like depending on your needs for your specific country. You'll receive, as I was telling, about citizenship and passport procedures, and those will be specifically to your own country. Even in some cases, we have intended parents that are fortunate enough to hold two different passports, and they might want to do the exit process for two different countries. That is also possible. Just make sure you give us the correct information so we can provide the actual real-time information for your country. And basically the whole legal conversation throughout your pregnancy is for you to be prepared for the post-birth legal exit process. We do have a legal advisors team in-house that will help you in that regard, but we are not a law firm. Therefore, you will most likely need to engage with a legal firm in Mexico to assist you with the legal process. We will be in contact with your legal firm of choice, and we will, of course, provide all of the documentation that you will need and the judge will need and the court process and everyone will need. So nothing to worry about. We have done the process hundreds of times. We know how it works and we are ready to help whenever needed. Now, pregnancy care, you're ready for the last steps of the journey and birth is about to happen. We are now at almost the end of the journey. The birth is the milestone that we always want to reach. That's what we want, right? And you need to be prepared. You'll be anxious by the time that your baby is going to be born. But the good thing is that the expectation is that you will be informed of the actual birth date because we will do our best to program a C-section. However, we cannot guarantee it will be a C-section because what if, for instance, your surrogate goes into labor and by the time she goes to the hospital or she gets to the hospital, the baby's halfway out already and there is no C-section, right? So even though we try to schedule always for the C-section, babies are unexpected, sometimes are not ready when we want them to be ready, and they want to be born ahead of time. So sometimes, even though we try, it doesn't happen, right? But hopefully you'll be here by the day that the baby is born, and most likely it will be a C-section. Now, anxiety will kick in. So let's go over these comments we have here. We always recommend intended parents to be in Mexico ahead of time. So if your C-section is scheduled for August 15, maybe you want to be here around August 10th, August 8th. That is mainly for you to find yourselves in the city you're going to be, Mexico City, Cancun, Merida, but also to make sure you have the time to maybe meet your surrogate before birth if you want, maybe arrange for some things that you will need for those days after birth. So we always recommend coming a few days before. And in some cases, it might be that, as I was telling you guys, the baby comes ahead of time. You cannot make it to the hospital in time. No problem. But mind that if that happens, you'll be hearing from us over the phone and hoping that you can make it to the hospital. Your coordinator should have prepared you already by the time you're in Mexico, and you should know everything there is to know about the birth and everything around it, so you have no surprises. By the time of birth, probably for the last 2 or 3 weeks of pregnancy, you will have very constant communication with your coordinator, but also with other team members here at Miracle, because we will create a WhatsApp group, a texting group, in which we will be answering your questions, solving your doubts. And in that group, we'll have our legal team, our concierge team, clinical services, and journey coordination. All of those 4 teams will be there to answer your questions, to help you throughout those nights in which your baby might be feeling sick and you need to contact a doctor. We will be there to help you. Now, the day of the birth, we always hope for intended parents to be in the delivery room when your baby arrives. But ultimately, the decision whether you'll be allowed into the delivery room or not, it's not for us or for you, but for the doctors. And especially because we are dealing with surrogacy here, maybe the surrogate wants on that specific day, I don't know, her sister to be with her, right? That means that there is already one of the slots, if you will, occupied, and maybe only one of you can make it into the delivery room. But we will try to make it happen. If not, we must understand that it's not always our decision or yours, right? Now, by the time your baby is born, the legal process will have already begun, and you'll be kept informed of every step that takes place before and after birth. Now, right after birth, for the first 2 days after delivery, your little miracle will stay in the hospital for the first 2 days. Although it's very important to mention that baby and surrogate will not be in the same room. The surrogate will have her own place, and the baby will be taken care of by the nurses and by you during those hours that you'll be in the hospital taking care of your newborn. Now, after being released, after those first 48 hours, that's when you take your little baby to your accommodation. And basically, it's the waiting period in which you have to, redundancy here, wait for the birth certificate to be issued and for the legal steps to finish, so you can request your passport to your consulate or embassy and return home. Now, going home does require time and many things, but very important, you cannot leave Mexico with these 3 things. The first, the birth certificate. The birth certificate is what identifies your baby as a Mexican citizen, right? And typically it should take from 1 to 4 weeks. It could be less, it could be more, but the average should not exceed 4 weeks. You cannot leave the country without a passport or a travel document. And I say this specifically because not all of the countries you're returning to need a passport. Some of them only need a travel authorization, and then the passport will be issued later on once you're at your home country. So either travel documents or passport, you will need one of those. And then, of course, if your baby is not medically cleared to leave the country, that means that your baby is not receiving assisted breathing or something else, right? You cannot leave the country. And the average time before you can leave Mexico, it's 6 weeks. It depends on the country, it depends on the legal process. And once again, every journey is different. So it's good to have the expectation of being here 6 weeks, but in many cases, it's less than 6 weeks. And some cases, it could take 6, 7, or 8 weeks. It depends on every single journey. And we are reaching the end of the process. And here's the actual time frame that most journeys need from beginning to end. You will see here, you will notice that we are counting the start of the journey being the contract signing and that medical preparation. So after contract signing, on average, all of our premium programs, which is an egg donor or self cycles in which you provide your own eggs, are back home within the first 12, 15 months after the signing of the contract. And for those who have embryos and ship them to us, on average, it's 10 to 12 months. And just a very quick thing that I just remembered. Yesterday, we had a discharge from the hospital of this couple from Canada. They shipped their embryos to us on October last year, and their baby was born 5 days ago. So for them, it's taken only 9 months, and they are almost ready to go home. Again, these are just average times, 12, 15 for egg donor programs and 10, 12 for ship embryo programs. The circumstances of every journey, of every single journey, will determine how long your journey lasts. It could be that you need 1 embryo implantation, that you need 2, or that you need maybe 2 egg collections because you run out of embryos. It's always good to have expectations, as we were saying, but it's never advised to have them as a guarantee of what your journey will look like. And now's the time for questions and answers. My colleague Eduardo, who's also in the call, will help me with this. I'm not so well versed in these technologies. I believe you are already asking questions. Just let me find how I can. Oh, here we are. And here we go with the questions and answers. Perfect. I see already some of your questions, which I'm going to be announcing and also answering. We have a question from Aaron, which says, can intended parents choose the city which they would like the journey to happen? Short answer is yes. In 99% of the cases, the city that you choose is the one where the baby should be born. There might be cases in which you choose, for example, Mexico City, but your chosen egg donor is in Cancun. That will require shipments of genetic material. Don't worry, those are on us, not on you. And due to surrogate availability, in very few cases, the intended parents had a surrogate from Cancun and they had chosen Mexico City. But 99% of the cases, yes, you are allowed to choose the city where your baby will be born. And that was for Aaron. We have another question here. I'm going to read it for you. Does Miracle have surrogates? Have the surrogates do a medicated, natural, or modified transfer for fetal embryo transfer prior to transferring the embryo to the surrogate? Which process do you use? Yes, there's different ways in which surrogates can be prepared for the actual embryo implantation. And those have to do basically with the natural cycle or the chemical cycle. In other words, are we waiting for the surrogate to have the menstrual cycle so we can begin the preparation of the endometrium? Or are we giving the surrogates birth control pills? And once they stop taking the pills, the cycle comes and we can begin with the stimulation. And the answer is we have used and we continue to use both protocols, depending on the surrogate, depending on the doctor's opinion for each case. And in many cases, it is true that we use the chemical cycle, if you will, the birth control pill cycle, because it allows for more control of the timeframes. If you were to have a very specific request on whether you prefer a natural cycle or a birth control pill cycle, let's talk about that, because we are always happy to make things happen for you guys. Now we have another question from Aaron saying, I did not quite catch the timeframes for pregnancy confirmation, and I'm happy to explain. Yes. So pregnancy confirmation will always happen between 4 and 5 weeks post embryo transfer. Let's take January 1st for embryo transfer day. Now, 10 days after that, we'll have the first pregnancy test. Most likely a second pregnancy test will take place 2 days after the first one. Then another week after the second pregnancy test, we should be having the first ultrasound, hoping to see the gestational sac. And another 2 weeks, roughly, after that first ultrasound, we will be having the second ultrasound, hoping to see the sac and also hear the heartbeat of your baby. In total, it should be 5 weeks tops after embryo transfer. Thank you, Aaron. We have another question from Alice. What additional criteria, screening criteria can IPs require for the surrogate? Rather than screening criteria, I was referring to, for instance, intended parents in some cases would prefer a surrogate within a very specific age range, say 25 to 32 years old. That is, for example, a criteria from many intended parents. And as long as we have surrogates that are available at that time and are within that age range, we are happy to assign them to you, no problem. Other criteria could be, for example, based on medical criteria. For example, if we have intended parents that both egg donor and sperm donor are negative blood type, we might want to assign a surrogate who is also negative blood type to avoid problems with RH incompatibilities throughout the pregnancy. And whenever it's a medical condition or a medical request, almost certainly we will make it happen. Whenever it's a request such as, I want my surrogate to be 29 years old. Well, she might not be 29, she might be 27, 30, but we will try to accommodate that request as long as it's possible. Very important. Let's not forget that all of the surrogates have already been mothers themselves. And something I did not mention before is that all of our surrogates age ranges from 21 to 37 years old maximum. And as a reference, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine in the US advises surrogates to be up to 45 years old. We understand that 45 might seem a very advanced age. That's why, for the peace of mind of all of our intended parents, we only go up to 37 years old. Therefore, by the time of birth, surrogates should be no more than 38 years old. Thank you, Alice, for your question. We have another question from Sayoni. Sorry if I mispronounced it. And the question is, does the birth always need to be a C-section? Can it just be a natural delivery? As I said before, for the sake of scheduling and for the sake of you guys being in Mexico City, Cancun, or Merida, we always try to schedule a C-section. And whenever it's not a C-section, it's because the surrogate went into labor and it was not recommended to stop and do a C-section, right? So short answer is most likely, yes, it'll be a C-section. If you are really set on a natural birth, you might suggest that to your coordinator, so he or she can bring it to the medical team and see what can happen. It's also important to understand that in many cases, or actually most of the cases, surrogates choose C-sections because for them it's a shorter time of labor, meaning that they have to suffer less. I hate to put it that way, but yes, that's it. Thank you, Sayoni, for your question. This one is already been answered. Now, another one from someone anonymous saying, It is the average exit timeline still around 4 to 6 weeks under the new amparo that was implemented a few months ago. You've brought up this topic of the amparo. I'll comment on it very quickly, but the answer to your question is we expect it to be shorter, the waiting time after birth. And I'll summarize this a lot, but the old amparo legal process used to begin right after birth. With the new amparo, it's not even called amparo, but we don't have a name for it. The new amparo at this moment begins shortly after heartbeat is confirmed. And what happens basically is that the surrogate will go to court in front of a judge and say that she wants to execute only one of her two rights. Whenever a woman is pregnant in Mexico, there's two rights that she could execute if she wanted. One of them is the procreational right, which means that she's pregnant to have a baby for herself. And the other one is the gestational right. That is the one that she's going to execute. And with that execution in front of a judge, there will be a document that states, an official document from the court stating that the surrogate will only carry the baby. Therefore, once the baby is born, the civil registry should count that document as sufficient to issue the birth certificate under the name of the intended parents only. That's why we expect it to be shorter, but since it has just been implemented, we have not yet seen the results. So that question will be better answered in a few months once we have already gone through the first cases of this new amparo process. Good, we go now with another question from Alice saying, do IPs need to come to Mexico before birth? For example, to sign the contract? The answer is no, or in theory, no. Long story short, if you're doing a program that requires a sperm deposit, you should come to Mexico to provide that sperm, or alternatively, you could ship your sperm from the US or from Canada or from Europe, from anywhere in the world, right? Now, you are not required to be in Mexico until birth. However, most intended parents, if feasible, they would come halfway through the pregnancy to meet the surrogate, to attend an appointment, which actually is very, very beautiful that you do that so you can break the ice already with the surrogate, right? But you're not required to come to Mexico until birth date. Okay, thank you, Alice, for your question. Another question, can we get a copy of this video call? We are going to post this webinar series once it's finished. That should be around October. But what we will do, or what you can do, it was anonymous, but just contact us and we are happy to send over a summary of this webinar, and we can even share the presentation with you, so no problem. Another question from Alice. How is the gestational carrier's home conditions assessed by Miracle? It's not only assessed by Miracle, but also by a third party that goes to her home address to conduct the psychological evaluation. Basically, what this third party and us through our clinical services teams, what we are looking for is to have a surrogate whose living conditions are decent. And by decent, meaning that they have a nice place where they can sleep, which is clean, with no signs of violence, of drug abuse, no tobacco, that they have the services that anyone at home could have, like running water, electricity, heating, not in Cancun, of course, but amongst many things, those are a few of the things that we check. And we have a report from that third party that takes care of the psychological assessment. And that report is the confirmation that this specific surrogate is going to move forward in the process. If you have any specific questions about how we screen surrogates, please address them by email if they are too specific. And we have time for one more question here from Sayoni. Once baby is delivered, will any assistance be provided for baby equipment, bottles? We will have, you will have us there for all the information that you will need. We will not be buying those products for you, but we are happy to share with you where to buy them, which specific equipment you should buy. And in some cases, we do have available some car seats or some bassinets that other intended parents have left here with us at Miracle. So you can use those if you ask and they are available. Thank you, Sayoni. Another question from Crystal here. How many embryos on average should be shipped? If you want to save money, I would say ship them all, because in case you need more than one embryo implantation, I don't think it's like financial wise having to ship more embryos, but we don't expect you to need more than 1 or 2 embryo transfers. So I'd say maybe 2 or 3 should suffice. But my advice from experience, I would say ship them all. Unless you have like 20 embryos, I would say ship 10 only, right? But maybe 2 or 3 should be enough. Each journey is different, so I cannot guarantee that 2, 3, or 4 will be enough. Another question, do we have time, Edu? I don't know how long. Never mind, I'll just continue answering questions here. Another question from Crystal. If we are shipping embryos, do we have to wait until, do we have to wait to ship until we have found a surrogate? No, actually, it's not until your embryos arrive in Mexico to one of our partner clinics that we will start counting those 8 to 10 weeks for the surrogate matching process. God or the universe forbid, what if something happened with the embryos during shipment? If we don't have embryos, why do we have to get a surrogate ready for you? Again, I don't mean to scare you away. We have never encountered issues throughout the shipment stages. But long story short, we will wait for your embryos to be in Mexico to start counting the weeks for the surrogate match. Another question, for those not from Mexico, do you have a list of law firms we can contact to help prepare the legal documents? I'll be very straightforward. We have been working with the same law firm for ages already, for many years. Happy to disclose the name. The name is called, the law firm is Altamirano Law Firm in Mexico City. They are experts in surrogacy and family matters in Mexico, so we wouldn't trust any other agency. So you can call them, you can contact them if you want, and if you have your own law firm, feel free to use them. We will still, of course, help you with everything that you will need, but we are only using or advising intended parents to use this law firm because we know that they will get the work done, and also because intended parents that come from Miracle and go to them, they have a discount on their fees. Now, another question here from Giovanni. I'm hungry, sorry. Do we choose the egg donor? And if so, how will they be presented to us? Also, do we choose the surrogate or are they selected for us? Second question first, we will choose the surrogate for you, basing our matching on medical criteria. If you have specifics that you would like the surrogate to meet, let us know and we'll try to match them. Now, for the egg donor part, you will choose a surrogate. We have a database of, on average, 200 egg donors available with frozen eggs or with fresh eggs. You will be seeing real pictures of the egg donors and their profiles. You can see them, you can download those profiles from the website, www.miraclesurrogacy.com/donors. You have to register and then you'll access our catalog of egg donors. Another one, can you explain the exit process for in Cancun? The exit process does not change per cities. It might change the court or the specific court that is dealing with your specific case, but the process works exactly the same. Birth certificate, passport, and then flying back home. It will change depending on the country where you're returning to, meaning that if you're, for example, from Canada, I would say you have to choose Mexico City because that's where the embassy is. And if you're from New Zealand, Mexico City. If you're from the US, Mexico City or Merida, because both cities have either consulate or embassy. If you're from China, either city, because the process is different, right? But rather than city-wise, I think it changes based on the country that you're returning to. Another question here. We are looking at a shipped embryo program. We are in a smaller city in Canada. What will that pose an issue? Does the shipping company ship everywhere in the world? yes, it might take a bit longer to schedule the shipment, but the pickup location should not be a problem at all. It will not impact the cost. In fact, you're mentioning Canada. The shipper that we are using charges $5,900 for shipments anywhere in Canada. That already includes the cryopreservation tanks, the shipment itself, and more importantly, the documents and permits that need to be issued by the Mexican government to enter Mexico with genetic material. Another question here from Miranda. Can we request the surrogate provide breast milk for a period of time? The answer is yes. It's actually quite common that intended parents request that service of the surrogate. And in 95% of the cases, it happens. And it's coordinated at the end of the process, of course, when the baby is born. And it works very, very easily. You provide the surrogate with a breast milk pump and also the bags to preserve the milk. And once you have a few of those milk bags filled, she ships them to your accommodation using Uber pickup systems or other systems that we can help you coordinate once you are here in Mexico. We are doing this practically every day, so you'll get that information once you're at the delivery stage practically. Another question from Eric. I was reading about percentage of successful embryos after 3 failed attempts. The cost is covered. Yes, there is one of our protocols, our policies, that says that if your embryos meet the criteria, and if you need more than 3 embryo implantations, after the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and subsequent embryo transfers, those are covered by Miracle, provided that those embryos, as I was mentioning, do meet the criteria, which is basically embryo quality, and they have to be PGT tested. Thank you, Eric, for that question. Suzanne, are there grants available to help with this surrogacy? There might be grants available through third parties. Like, for example, we are familiar with Men Having Babies having grants for intended parents. And I also know, of course I know, that at some point of the year, Miracle Surrogacy offers grants or discounts for your surrogacy journey. Not long ago, in April and May, we had a grant of $3,000 for every new intended parent. So there might be a time of the year in which we have grants available, and but I cannot tell you because I don't know actually when we will have any promotions or grants. Thank you, Suzanne. Another question, will both IPs, mother and father, or it is also possible father and father, need to be at the hospital in order to live with the baby after birth? The answer is no. However, it's always best if both of you are there. However, to return back home and for the embassy appointment, both parents will have to be at the embassy if both parents are going to be on the birth certificate. Thank you. And we have one last question here. Oh, we have a few more. Good. Can we ship just one embryo, or do you require multiple embryos? Many cases we have received of shipped embryo programs with only one embryo. That is perfectly doable, and they have succeeded, right? So it's not a condition. It's not a requirement to ship only one or many. You can ship only one or as many as you have. Another question here, is there a Canadian consulate in Merida? The answer is no, not that we know of. We know there's the Canadian Embassy in Mexico City, and there is a consular office in Cancun. However, they only open 1 or 2 days a week, which limits the amount of time available. But more importantly, it also limits the type of paperwork that can be done with them. So for Canadians, I strongly recommend always to seek a program in Mexico City. Is it mandatory that we ship PGT embryos that have undergone PGT? No. An embryo that has not been PGT tested is perfectly suitable for implantation. The reason why we don't implant embryos that are deemed abnormal after PGT is because those embryos, which are abnormal embryos, have very few chances, if not zero, of implantation. So in a way, we are helping you save money by implanting embryos, or by only implanting embryos that are healthy. By implanting embryos which have not been PGT tested, you risk implanting abnormal embryos, of course, without knowing it. But it's not mandatory to ship PGT tested embryos. And the last question I see here is from Sayoni. Can you have a surrogate give birth in another city? For example, egg donor in Merida, but birth done in Mexico City. The answer is yes. It's quite common that we choose a donor from a city that we like. I did that with my twins. Our egg donor was from Mexico City, but we had, well, not we. Miracle had her donate in Cancun for us. But in any case, yes, some intended parents create the embryos in Mexico City and they have a surrogate from Cancun, or vice versa. They might have the egg donor from Cancun and the surrogate from Mexico City. Very important that you let us know beforehand where you want your baby to be born. Okay? Gosh, questions keep coming. I don't know if we have time, Edu. Interrupt me if we are going too long. I don't even know if Zoom is going to allow this, but next question. Can we choose to implant more than one embryo? The answer is yes. However, implanting one embryo, especially if that embryo is PGT tested, is the recommendation extended for most professionals around the world. Why is that? By implanting two embryos, there is a risk, and don't get me wrong, I'm saying risk, of twin pregnancy, which is a high-risk pregnancy, and also is a pregnancy prone to have prematurity at birth, right? Or a pregnancy that could have more complications. So unless you are set on attempting to have twins and you want to implant two embryos, and you have already signed a document that we will provide in which you understand the risks of double embryo implantations, yes, you can implant two embryos, never more than two. Next question, anonymous attendee here. What happens with the remaining embryo that we ship if we don't end up using them? Well, those embryos will never be destroyed or discarded unless you want to. In other words, they will be kept in cryopreservation in storage for as long as you need, provided that the storage fees are covered. Or you could choose to ship them back to your home country. That's another possibility, of course. Aaron, can the birth certificate, I lost the question. Can the birth certificate have the father as the only parent through the amparo process for a single intended parent? The answer is yes. The amparo, or the legal process, actually allows intended parents to choose who is going to be on the birth certificate. Of course, we are not going to put the father's name and somebody else's cousin name on the birth certificate. But what I mean here is that you can choose if it's going to be only one parent or both parents. But for sure, we would never, ever recommend having the surrogate on that document, on the birth certificate. Because remember that there is only one birth certificate, original document, and that's the one issued in Mexico. Okay, sorry. Oh, no worries, Eduardo, thank you very much. Where was I? Birth certificate, yes. There will always be only one original birth certificate. Who else? What else here? Alice, another question from you, thank you. If your embryos have been PGTA tested in IP's home country, but gender is not disclosed to IPs due to law in home country, will IPs be able to choose the gender? Is there additional cost? Well, we would never ever recommend having the embryos undergo PGT again, only to find out the gender of those embryos, because those embryos have to be thawed, biopsied, and frozen again. That most likely will damage the embryos because they have to be frozen and then thawed again for implantation. But I know that some countries, like where I come from in Spain or Canada, they do allow and recommend genetic testing. However, due to legislation in those countries, they don't disclose, the labs are not allowed to disclose the gender of the baby. In some cases, not all of them, once the embryos are already in Mexico and you are doing surrogacy in Mexico, we have inquired the lab, the original lab that did the PGT, to disclose the information of those embryos, of the gender. And in some cases, that has been revealed, and we are happy to share it with you, and you can choose whether you want to implant a baby boy embryo or a girl embryo. That's fine, no extra cost. Thank you, Alice, for your question. And here's the last question I can see. What happens if we decide not to follow through with the amparo process to save cost? I love the question and I hate it. The problem is that it is possible to obtain a birth certificate with the surrogate's name and the intended parent that provided the sperm. However, we never recommend that for one single reason. If the surrogate's name is stated on the birth certificate, that means that for Mexico, she will always, forever and ever, be the mother of that baby. We know that for some countries, like for instance, New Zealand, the actual procedure is that they must have the surrogate on the birth certificate. So for them, it's no problem. But for other countries, please consult with a lawyer that specializes in immigration and family matters, because it's very particular to each country. So in short, yes, you could have the surrogate on the birth certificate. We never recommend it. You would save a big chunk of money, but it might turn out that, God forbid, the universe forbid, in 10 years' time, you need something and the authority of your country requests the presence of the surrogate just because she's on the birth certificate, right? And that is every question that we have. If you have more questions and you're still here with me, bearing with me, please send an email. My email is carlos@miraclesurrogacy.com. You can also reach out to your coordinator if you're already in contact with Miracle Surrogacy. We are happy to answer your questions. And that's all on my end. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure sharing with you my knowledge from Mexico today. We are at Miracle's office in Mexico. And the next webinar will be held in 2 weeks. That will be on August 14th. And the subject of that specific webinar is egg donors from screening to retrieval. So if you feel like you want to know more about how the egg donor process works, sign up for that webinar. You'll receive the information by email. And that's it, folks. Thank you very much and have a